Good morning, Friendship United Methodist Church. I'd like to welcome you on this 25th day of May 2025, Memorial Day weekend. Now, Memorial Day is primarily a national holiday on which we remember and honor the men and women who have given their lives for our country. In the words of Abraham Lincoln, it is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this. It is fitting and proper to observe Memorial Day not only as Americans, but also as Christians. There should be no conflict between our loyalty to God and our loyalty to our country and to our family. These loyalties reinforce one another. For God has not set us to live our lives in isolation or privacy, but within the frameworks of living which He has appointed. The life which He gave us has an inescapable membership character. By divine appointment, we are members of a home, a community, and of a nation, just as to be a Christian is to be a member of the churches of Christ. To live as God intended us to live, we must fulfill our obligation in each of these spheres. But what is the spirit in which we are to observe Memorial Day? This touching little story from the Old Testament, as I read in the liturgy earlier, illustrates the right spirit. King David, weary and spent after a hard battle with his enemies, the Philistines, takes refuge in a cave near his native town of Bethlehem. Spurred by the memories of his childhood, but knowing that the town is occupied by the enemy and that he is therefore longing for the impossible, King David exclaims, "Oh, that someone would give me water to drink from the well of Bethlehem, which is by the gate." But hardly have these words fallen from King David's lips when three of his heroic soldiers break through the enemy lines, draw water from the well of Bethlehem, and bring this precious drink to King David. David receives the vessel from the hands of the men, the heroes, he put it, but he would not drink of it. He poured it out to the Lord and said, "Far be it from me before my God that I should do this. Shall I drink the lifeblood of these men? For at the risk of their lives they brought it, bought at the price of a willingness to make so great a sacrifice. It was too costly a drink to be enjoyed selfishly. The only use it was worthy of was as a drink offering to the Lord." This sensitivity to sacrifices made for us, and this sense of obligation to make consecrated use of the results of the sacrifices constitutes the right spirit for celebrating Memorial Day. No one has expressed this spirit so concisely and yet so eloquently as Lincoln did at Gettysburg. And three thoughts from his address to be underscored today. First, the appreciation of a great heritage. Our fathers brought forth upon this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. The land which the fathers of our nation have bequeathed to us is the land of liberty and equality. The flag which they lifted over it is a flag which stands for the freedom of thought, speech, of conscience, and worship. and it represents the right of every citizen, to enjoy these freedoms and equal opportunity to make the most of his or her God-given capacities. The fathers accepted this liberty and equality sacred trust from the hand of God and taught us to praise the power that has made and preserved our nation. We need to remember this. Are we worthy heirs of such riches? Do we prize them so highly that we constantly thank God for them? Do we appreciate the high privilege of American citizenship? And do we make responsible and constructive use of it? We Americans of the 21st century, who tend to take our freedom for granted, need to recover the reverent appreciation of which the fathers had and which Lincoln had. In this spirit which Finland achieved its independence, the poet Koskinen wrote a stirring ode to the freedom of Finland. These lines are much better in the original poetry, but even in their prose, the message comes through. You are the highest, the most longed for under heaven. We have waited for you, and now you long expected, you bride of our dreams, are here to wipe away the disgrace of slavery. We cannot weave you a garland of flowers, we cannot make it out of roses or laurels, but we lift up to your brow the crown of our people's suffering. And standing at your altar, we vow as a nation, only over our bodies does the oppressor come near you. Only when the last arm has stiffened, still grasping the hilt. Only when the last drop of blood has been spilled before you. It was this spirit which girded the Finnish patriots when 2 decades later they stood up bravely in defense of their freedom against an overwhelming oppressor. Today, we honor Americans who have defended our nation and our freedom in the same spirit. The second thought from Lincoln is the acknowledgement of the price paid for our heritage. We remember those who gave the last full measure of devotion, who gave their lives that that nation might live. Memorial Day causes us to pay respect to the brave men and women, living and dead, who have fought to preserve the nation. But in so doing, we are compelled to count the cost of our heritage in terms of the lives of the fathers and sons, in the terms of widows and orphans. On the long run, we must appreciate most of the things for which we have paid the most. Our American way of life has been purchased at a high price, a very high price. We thank you to all the men and women who, like David, have placed their lives in jeopardy for us. We honor those now who are serving in the armed forces of our country, and we remember gratefully the veterans of wars of yesterday who responded to their country's call in an hour of danger. If we have caught the vision of Memorial Day, we see not only the parades of today, but also an otherwise invisible parade of heroes marching from Valley Forge and Gettysburg, as well as the battlefields of the last and present century. Soldiers whose blood has nourished the soil from which our freedom grows. When the train bearing the body of Abraham Lincoln to its final resting place stopped at a railroad station in Albany, crowds gathered to get a last view of the martyred president. A poor black woman lifted her son up, lifted him up above the crowd and said, "Son, take a long look. He died for you." Just so, we today try to take a long look and view with reverent respect all those whose lives are the price of our heritage. The third thought from Lincoln is a consecration to the task of preserving our heritage. Did you hear me? A consecration to the task of preserving our heritage. The great president asked us, the living, to be dedicated to the unfinished work which the heroes so nobly advanced. He pleads from the honored dead we take increased devotion to the cause of responsible freedom, that we might highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, so that this nation, under God, shall have a new birth of freedom. That this nation, under God, shall have a new birth of freedom. Today, at the conclusion of a disastrous war in Vietnam, in the worst sense, but Vietnam, we're haunted by the feeling that 58,220 Americans have died indeed in vain. But if this tragedy will serve to awaken us to dedicate ourselves to the unfinished work before us, to set our house in order, to strive intelligently and responsibly to prevent the recurrence of such a tragedy, then the sacrifice will not have been in vain. Then we shall have a new birth of freedom. And we really need a new birth of freedom in this nation today. And we'll have the vision which Lincoln presents in another famous address will be realized. With malice toward none, with charity for all, with firmness in the right as God gives us to see the right, let us strive to finish our work we are in, to bind up the nation's wounds, to care for him who shall have borne the battle, for his widow and for his orphan, to do all which may achieve and cherish a just and lasting peace among ourselves and with all nations. A word, friends, must be spoken about another aspect of Memorial Day. It has become a day which we remember not only our soldiers, but also our loved ones who are no longer with us. To many, it's simply Decoration Day, when pilgrimages are made to cemeteries to place flowers on the graves of the departed. That seems to be less and less each year, doesn't it? But it leads us to think about death and about our relation to the dead. Ordinarily, we are reluctant to face the fact of death. Unlike the Middle Ages, when writings on the art of dying were bestsellers, this subject is carefully avoided or artfully camouflaged. Through a conspiracy of silence, impending death is concealed as long as possible from the one whom it most directly concerns. And when the inevitable event takes place, the invasion continues. People no longer say, die. They say, passed away. Funerals have become memorial services, and cemeteries are memorial gardens, implying that, that's where we're going to spring back to life. Often, the subject of funeral sermonette is that the departed one is not really dead at all, for he or she has only gone before to the beautiful isle of somewhere which lies beyond the sunset. Friends console the bereaved, observing how natural their loved one looks as he or she lies peacefully in a corrosion-defying bronze coffin amid the flowers. The Christian view of death has none of this evasion. It is in accord with the scientific fact that when we die, we are really dead. Our hopes and desires cannot change that fact. Man does not differ from the rest of creation by having a soul that cannot die. The difference lies in his power, in having been created to have his existence in a relationship with God beyond the grave. And the tragedy of this life is that he no longer exists in the current relationship we have with God. He or she is a sinner and they must die. We're all sinners and we're all going to die. For the wages of sin is death. Death is God's judgment on humanity's godliness. And from that judgment, friends, there is no appeal. It is awareness of a personal responsibility to God against the background of a broken personal fellowship with God that makes our death more terrifying to man than to other creatures. The terror of death, however, is overcome, friends, by the recovery of an indestructible God relationship. The basic question is not, am I a man and therefore capable of withstanding death? But am I a new man in Christ and therefore assured that not even death can separate me from God? In every case of death, friends, life as we know it comes to an end. If it were not so, resurrection, the creation of new life by the power of God, would have no meaning, for only the dead can be resurrected. So we will die on this earth and be resurrected, as was Jesus Christ, into the heavenly kingdom. It is the risen Lord who assures us, because I live, you will live also. As we remember our dead, we wonder, where are they now, and what is their condition? And the answer must be, the blessed dead are with God, and they are closer to him than ever before. If heaven means nearness to God, and that is what it means to a Christian, friends, then they are, and we will be, in heaven. To depart and be with Christ, says Paul, is far better than life on earth. Death is real, but the believer relies on the word of the Lord. If a man has faith in me, even though he die, yet shall he come to life. John 11:25. The life to which he comes to be with Christ and to be changed into his likeness from one degree of glory to another. Corinthians 3:18. 2 Corinthians, I believe what that is. You can check me on 2 Corinthians 3:18. But heaven, in its eternal fullness, the God relationship in its perfection, awaits the final triumph of Christ and the resurrection of all the dead. Then God's purpose for his whole creation will be completely fulfilled. As we remember our country's heroes and our own loved ones like David of old, we offer our thanks to God and say, for those we love within the veil, who once were comrades of our way, we thank thee, Lord, for they have won to cloudless day. There are no tears within their eyes, with love they keep perpetual tryst, and praise and work and rest are one with thee, O Christ. Amen. Happy Memorial Day.